Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us, and welcome. Welcome once again to another excellent episode of the teissTalk. We've got a fantastic show for you. I'm a little flustered because actually my computer just crashed literally about 90 seconds ago. So, yes, just trying to get back on top of it all. Yes, we have got a fantastic show to you today, talking about cybersecurity as a business metric, giving your C-suite the data to govern. We've got some great guests for you. Two of them are ready and waiting. One of them will be here presently, probably having similar technical problems, but we'll be fine. We'll be absolutely fine. A couple of housekeeping notices. First of all, if you're joining us on LinkedIn Live, welcome. You will not be able to ask a question, and that is very important, as you'll find out slightly later on. You'll not be able to ask a question on LinkedIn Live, so if you wish to, you go to tice.co.uk/ticetalk and log in there and join us from the links provided there. When you are on there and watching us through the regular channels, you will see a little chat icon around about here on your screen. You can send us a question for the panelists and for us and for anything that we're talking about. The best question, potentially even the worst question, has happened, or the most interesting, or the one that makes us squirm the most, will be awarded a teissTalk mug. Now, if you were at the Tice conference last week, you'll know that I gave away 11 of these. 11. That's what you missed out. But I'm giving just one away today to the best question, so please do get involved. In the meantime, I'm going to ask onto the stage two of our panelists. The third one will no doubt come crashing in later. Please welcome onto the stage Ed and Bjorn. Hello, Ed.
Hello,
Welcome, welcome. Good to have you back, sir. Much appreciated.
lovely
And
to be back.
always, right? Always. And
Absolutely.
hello, Bjorn.
Yeah, thank you so much. Obviously you just got hacked, so
Something happened. Well, I mean, we were making mention of World War III, which we're going to see in a minute. Maybe that's what it was. Bjorn, we should also thank you for being this week's sponsor. So, any of our audience that are drinking tea, coffee, or eating biscuits, you can thank Bjorn for sponsorship of this week's show. Let's move on to the straight on to the news item. And it's from our friends at the show, Info Security Magazine. And effectively, it's talking about the head of Google's warning about the likelihood of Iranian attacks, Iranian cyber attacks, which slightly comes from the school of the bleeding obvious, where, when we're thinking about, we were being attacked by Iran before anyway. Now that we're in the middle of an actual physical conflict, of course these are going to happen. But what should we expect to see when, as over the coming weeks, as Iran ramps this up in the face of quite a considerable physical attack, an onslaught, effectively?
Well, I think it's that, as you say, none of it's new. They, everyone's been trying to hack us all the time, and nation states have always done, have done this for a long time. So, how much of this? I guess the interesting bit for me is this is going to raise the anxiety of the exec, the boards we're talking about, and it's not necessarily that relevant to them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
absolutely people will go after national critical infrastructure. Absolutely people will go after finances and supply chain and people like that. So maybe it will impact you, but it's going to raise a lot of questions at the executive level, and we need to,
I
be ready to answer it.
I
Bjorn.
think when you're talking about nation state actors,
Mm.
Iran is probably very present and visible as a nation state actor,
Mm.
but I don't think you would rank them at the sort of top of the food chain in terms of their capabilities. So they've been doing stuff for a long time. They're probably mostly doing espionage, collecting data sort of passively for probably multiple years. But now it's more about the sort of activities that they undertake, given that, countries are in a state of war. So what will they attack? They're gonna like make a huge message for like you said, critical infrastructure. If they're already in the systems of hospitals, this can be quite scary.
Yeah. And we've they're now really highly motivated. I mean, they were motivated before by whatever reasons that the regime gave them, but they're highly motivated now. They're a country under attack. We've already seen that some of the actual I hate to use the phrase the kinetic attack, the kinetic responses there. They're
Mm.
going out into all sorts of different countries. The cyber element of it is going to replicate that. They're going to lash out, and I don't mean to sound condescending at all. They're going to lash out at anybody and everything.
And it's not necessarily centrally organized. It's not necessarily the government doing it. It's, vaguely associated groups, people using it as an excuse as well. It's, we've seen from other conflicts that people just use it as an excuse, as political cover to go and have a go.
But
Right.
don't you think there's a difference between sort of like nation-sponsored actors and then sort of nation-state actors themselves?
It- Absolutely. And attributing who is doing something is really
That's
difficult.
that's going to be challenging. That's going to be
It's,
challenging.
there's a lot of this group with this name did this. Well, sort of. It's a loose collection of people. But to our side, if it brings attention to this, if it gets the conversations at the executive level, good article.
Yeah, it's good for business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and actually, having it in a info security magazine, it's got a fairly broad readership, right? It's not an
Hmm.
overly specific. I was going to say trade rag. That's the wrong phrase entirely. My apologies, InfoSec magazine. It's not. As a readership goes, it's much broader than just security. Is what I'm trying to say. And what it is doing is it is highlighting this inevitable, again, I'll use the phrase again, onslaught of constant attacks from a variety of nation states and nation state backed actors. It swims it into focus more for our executive leadership.
It it does. Though sometimes I find it distracts them because they start talking about incredibly sophisticated 0 day nation states, yet they still have a password of password. They still,
Yeah,
every time
yeah,
we look at them,
yeah,
they still haven't done the basics, and you're going, this doesn't need James Bond. This needs somebody who can spell.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
Um,
Who can
I can,
translate password from Iranian to English?
well, yeah. I think, when you're talking about that, we especially as sort of like security professionals, we talk a lot about, in technical terms instead of business terms. And, like you said, 0 day vulnerabilities. What the hell does
hmm,
that mean anyway? And I kind of feel like it's our fault that we're in a state where cybersecurity feels kind of mysterious. It feels like it's sort of in a shadow of some, mystical or magical cloak.
yeah,
And I mean, it's also kind of our responsibility to try to fix it.
Yeah,
absolutely. This problem we have is of our making. It's we have scared people and then used long, complicated words. And as an industry, we sometimes complain about we're the guys with the hoodies who they keep in the basement. That that's sort of because we wanted to go into the basement and
yeah.
stay away from them. And it's our legacy. We have to deal with it.
I
We
also think that sort of cybersecurity as an umbrella concept. We have kind of like these three disciplines. You have the offensive security people, that's the
Mm,
0 day stuff. Then we have the blue teams, the teams, the IT sort of like security
mm.
teams that are trying to defend stuff. And then you have compliance, and none of these speak the same language between themselves. Not to mention they can't talk to the
Yeah,
people upstairs.
absolutely. And we run it as a separate risk to all the other risks in the business, which I always find bizarre. Of the availability risk of your data center burning down versus it being hacked and switched off. It's availability,
yeah.
and we need to stop saying you've got business and enterprise risk over here, and then you've got nerdy cyber risk over here. You know,
It's the same stuff.
it's the same stuff. Your company's buggered.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
We've segued very neatly, I think, into the panel proper here about giving the C-suite the data to
Mm.
govern and actually the information to govern, because I think I think to both of your earlier points, we're to blame for actually throw in fear, uncertainty, and doubt at them. A lot of FUD. We're to blame for throwing lots of TLAs and 4LAs when it comes to
Mm.
terminology, and then for throwing, rag status that purely, red, amber, green, which mean nothing to them, or even some vanity metrics, even worse. We've blocked this much at the gateway, etc.,
Yeah,
etc. So we've got, and we have come a long way. There's no doubt about it. We've come an absolute long way to addressing this. The fact that we're even talking about it, the fact that we're still talking about it means we need to do more. But where are we? Where are we on this sort of journey of going from we would just throw
mm.
some vanity metrics at them to where are we now as an industry, do you think?
I think we are getting better, and I certainly see that. But I absolutely still see the sort of metrics you're talking about. I see well, hey, we've installed 4,000 patches this month.
Yeah.
Huh? Do I care?
Yeah.
Is that good or bad? Or
Yeah.
I really like we've blocked 4,000 attempts of SSH on our firewall.
Yeah.
Cool. What about the
Jolly
ones you
well
didn't block?
done. Congratulations.
But we are seeing. I'm certainly seeing more people going. Cool. What is the current status of our risk tolerance? Where do we sit in relation to that? Or what is our status of compliance with our own stated policies? So rather than saying we've patched 4,000 servers, going, our policy statement is we will patch 98% of everything within 30 days. Cool. Are we
Are we
close to
meeting
it?
that?
Are we
Yeah.
meeting that? And that manages all of we've got exceptions, that sort of stuff. But then, of course, you've got the other side of when you start looking at this, is the data actually accurate? So is it meaningful, useful data? But also, do the guys generating the KPIs actually have the accurate data? And so you've got to somehow assure it.
As
I feel like I'm in a bit of a unique position as a sort of like a CEO from a
Mm,
cybersecurity background. And I think the real question here is, I mean, accuracy, absolutely, really important, at least at some levels. But I think it's much more about having high signal, whether they're KPIs or metrics, a high
mm,
signal for the right audience. Being the CEO of a cybersecurity company, why even would I care about the state of cybersecurity at my company, my own
mm.
cybersecurity company? Do you understand? You know,
you got bigger problems.
everything is about, growth and revenue and profits and, keeping the lights on.
Mm.
This is what actually matters. How do you translate sort of like that security risk on a really wide sort of scale into some kind of business clarity? So actionable high signal,
Mm.
not just what's the state of things. It's also, and then what? What do I do? Who do I
Yeah,
talk to?
yeah. What is the so what? So for every KPI, we should go. So what? Why do I care? Does it add value to my business? So if you're in a heavily regulated financial services industry, cool. Am I going to keep the regulators happy? Because they can shut me down today. So is that managing that? And actually, will it bring me more investment? Because if I can demonstrate I'm in the right place and I'm better than the other people, I'm going to get more people putting their money in my system.
Yeah, I
Mm.
love that. The part about am I better than everybody else? This sort of idea of competition, I think, is really at the foreground of that level, right?
It is, but what I find amazing is where people want to be. So 5, 10 years ago, it was, oh, I want to be at the top of the metric. I want to be at the top of the pack. And now they're going, well, I don't believe anyone else's metrics that are published or all of the benchmarks. And I want to be just a little bit better than everyone else. Not vastly, just a bit
Yeah.
better.
You mean faster than the slowest person before the line
I,
gets you?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just want them to break into the house next door, not mine.
There's a
I,
community spirit-minded statement
Yeah,
if ever I
but
heard
it's
one.
but it's probably true, right?
Yeah. So
But
no.
we don't want to stop there. We think that companies have something higher to
mm,
aspire to. But that's probably true for most. And I like to think about, when companies are on cybersecurity journeys, they
mm,
sort of fall into the categories of, they are just doing it for the checkbox, or they are sort of at early in their journey, but they actually are interested. They want to make things better. And
mm.
then you have, of course, a few that are actually mature and doing things really well.
Yeah.
Turns out there are few, but there are a few.
Yeah,
Well,
and it's
Oh, sorry, go on,
So
Ed.
I was going to say it really is the adding value thing. I'm slightly spoiled that a lot of my client engagements start with doing a due diligence. Somebody wants to buy this company, and the value is really obvious there because somebody like me comes along and goes, they've got too much cyber risk. You need to invest 50 million, and that comes off the price.
Yeah.
So that's a really obvious thing. But when it's a long established company, and it's harder to go, this makes your company better, more efficient, producing more money.
So I want to bring up a stat that I heard from
Mm,
Gartner last year that said in the top 10 risks or top 10 issues that boards look at the most.
mm,
Number one and number two is cost and revenue.
mm.
Obviously, what are our operational costs? How efficient are we, and how much are we making? And number eight on that list is cyber risk. So it's not even top five. And let's face it, most board meetings, you don't tend to get past the top three or five items.
I'm not sure I agree with that. So we have research that says it's in the top one or two um, at the very senior exec level. But I guess it depends on the company. I think it also depends on the industry because the regulators are putting such pressure on cyber being not just done but properly considered and managed.
Yeah.
That when the regulator goes, you don't just have to do the tick box. You have to prove you are taking it seriously and you've got somebody on the board who understands it. Great, but I think maybe in other industries less so.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into that regulators and regulation
Hmm.
side in just a second because we've got a poll to throw out to the audience, which we'll leave running for a few minutes. And I'm paraphrasing here, but the poll says, "Do you think your um, board understand the KPIs you are giving them?" With an option of yes, no, don't know, and I don't give KPIs. So let's leave that running for a few minutes just to get a sort of a feel from the room as to where we might be on that. And actually, on regulations, and in fact, that was the next point I was going to come to. We've actually got a question from Deepak. Well done, Deepak. With new regulations placing personal liability on directors, how are you seeing the vibe in the boardroom
Hmm.
change?
Huge amounts of change, and especially interestingly, non-execs. So I'm spending a lot of time with non-execs who are going, I can't get into the detail too much because I need to maintain separation so that I'm doing my non-exec job. But how do I know they are doing what they're meant to do? What are the 4 or 5 questions I can throw in there that will give me reassurance? So I'm getting a lot of questions and spending a lot of time with non-execs who are going, I'm at risk here. It's part of my job now to actually care about this.
Yeah.
I have a prediction on this. I think
Mm,
it's going to go like this. Okay, so I mean, we are seeing new regulations, and they are making directors, report people
mm,
personally, legally, and potentially even financially responsible. And I think sadly this is necessary because putting sort of like the pressure on financially on this on the companies. But okay, so the prediction goes like this: the highest paid people are receiving all of the risk, and they are the ones that carry the responsibility, but they don't know the language. So what they will do first is they will buy insurance. They will buy,
mm.
cybersecurity executive insurance, and then when the price of that increases, that's when they will actually try to make things better so that they fix the things. And it's highly motivated towards sort of like the persons. And I really think this is going to be what we're going to see this year.
So we'll only see a major change when insurance costs rise.
Yes, or if any kind of cost rises, if people or companies are found to be in violation with these regulations, they will be, slapped with some fines. And in some countries, they're so high that, they can bankrupt the company just with a small fine, like in the Nordics.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we also, when GDPR came in, we saw, and I can't think of a polite word for this, I'm afraid. We saw the promotion of patsies of somebody very junior who was suddenly given a senior role and a nice pay rise and responsibility for GDPR, who didn't really know what they were signing up for and didn't have the authority or the clout to make it happen.
Yeah.
I worry that's something that will come where they'll go, oh, you know about cyber, and you've had the job for 5 years. come and have something where you are named as responsible. And I think in regulated industries we'll spot that, but in other places you'll get somebody and they might not be senior enough to go, this is not a promotion, this is a trap.
No, Admiral Akbar would be proud.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. We've got another question here from Xavier. Thank you, Xavier. If a breach occurs, what specific evidence of governance will regulators and insurers expect to see from a CEO or non-execs? Which is quite interesting because we're looping this back to, are we giving them the data to govern? It could be very easily said, we were not given the data.
But of course, they should be asking as well. So if they're doing it properly, they shouldn't just be going, oh, here's a pen test that's got lots of green ticks on it. Yay, we're good. They should be asking. And when I've cleared up breaches and the regulators have been involved, they're not interested in, have you met this standard? Have you had an audit? They're interested in, is it appropriate for your business and the risk of the business?
Yeah.
That's what they care about. And they love a graph going, here's our risk tolerance. We have mapped our processes and we're within risk tolerance. We're outside of it. And they also accept it's never going to be perfect. So they are they love we're working on it. Here's a direction of travel.
It's cognizance of the risk that you are taking. And as long as you're not being completely egregious in your approach or completely, completely loose with your interpretation of it, as long as you're cognizant that there is a risk and you're aware of it, then actually different companies take different levels of risk.
They do. And risk is not inherently bad. It enables business change and the creation of value. So, I had a conversation with a bank once where, do we install bulletproof glass behind all the counters? Because people come in with a shotgun once in a while. It's incredibly expensive to install bulletproof glass. We made the decision, actually, they can only carry a certain amount of cash. It's not a very common occurrence. We'll just insure it. Yeah, and we literally train the staff. Somebody demands it, you go, not my cash, you have it. And that's a perfectly valid risk approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think many companies, exports, will have a huge amount of trouble, doing that sort of translation. So we use these terminology like threat modeling and stuff like that, but it doesn't really mean anything until you're actually given it a name. I just think that some people I guess they will just overshoot the threshold by a long shot, and not in meaningful ways. And I like to think about this in terms of, what's the sort of like actual risk. One company I used to talk to, actually UK based, they're in food production. So thinking about a vulnerability or something like that in terms of your business is really beneficial. In food production, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, you change the boiling temperature of water to 60 degrees Celsius. So you have created food contamination. This is the worst case scenario, and it creates actual food contamination, people get sick or even die, that kind of thing. And I don't know about bulletproof glass. We don't really have that sort of stuff here in Iceland. But you catch my drift,
no crime.
right?
No crime.
There's no crime here.
So we've just closed the poll. So let's bring up the results of the poll. And I've also just heard that our third panelist, Lisa, is suffering from major technical issues. Not something she could see the GP about, unfortunately, but major technical issues, and won't be able to join us. Hopefully we'll welcome her to another show very, very soon. So it's quite balanced, actually, isn't it? Broadly speaking. Do you think your board truly understand the KPIs you present to them? 2 have said no. So it's fairly even. Is that surprising? Well, we're in the middle of a journey, so I guess not.
Yeah, but I think I really like the point we just had about what are the things what actually matters to you. So if you're doing food production, killing somebody is bad for the brand. That's we know that. We accept.
Not great for the person you've killed either, in fairness.
But that's everyone understands that. They don't need to understand cyber They
It's
don't
very
even,
black and white, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. And, threat to personal safety. Cool. That's a really easy thing to explain. Does this impact? Because I can absolutely see the exec are going to struggle with, oh, we've got this SCADA system over here that's 15 years old. We need to patch it and replace the wiring to make it blah, 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 versus somebody could change the recipe.
Yeah.
And,
Kills
but
them.
yeah, it also leads to really cool, how do we fix this? What are the responses? So I worked with a food company, and the solution was they were scared about loss of availability because restarting the production lines takes 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
And then it was, hold on a second, this stuff is incredibly shelf stable for years, and you've got a half empty warehouse. Why don't you just have a week's worth on the shelf?
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
And that's sort of just like logical. But I
Yeah.
wanted to add to this. It's like when you're talking about stoppage or something like that for any kind of production, you're speaking directly to the wallet, right? That's the
Yeah,
the link.
yeah, and if we can't explain this in language they use, so dollars and pounds, or we're going to lose our license, or we're going to damage the brand, it's the wrong language.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's still kind of sad that you have to include fear
Yeah.
into the mix.
FUD never works and never said, or it works once. It doesn't work beyond that. Another question from Peter. With new regulations placing more personal liability on the broader C-suite and board, do you foresee a shift in the power dynamic? Specifically, will CISOs finally be given the direct authority and budget to execute remediation plans rather than having to wait on CEO or board approval? Woo! Heady days there, Peter, if you're looking for the money to go and do whatever the hell you want.
Honest response for me is I hope not.
that's,
But
I'd love to drill down into that. That's great.
I don't feel like that's their job. It's not the job of the CISO to be
Exactly.
at the executive layer. It's their job to make sure that everything is fine and dandy at the lower levels and then report up to the C-suite,
But I guess
in
that's
my
a
opinion.
fundamental thing of should a CISO be at that executive level or not? And that's splits
I,
opinion.
I think
Yes.
they should, but I actually agree that the CISO is meant to be, second line. We're meant to have a multi line of defense. The CISO shouldn't be out there installing patches. The CISO should not be out there
Yeah.
re-architecting something. They should be going, this is what good looks like. That is not good. Bugger off and fix it. And if they are running the remediation directly themselves, something is wrong in the model because they're ultimately marking their own homework.
But
Yeah.
is that the sentiment here that the CISOs are placed, too low level, but not high enough, but you don't want them at the absolute top, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It's like they're high enough to be blamed, but not high enough that they can actually do something about it, I think is the general refrain.
so. I think this is super wide. CISOs are probably, some of them are compliance heavy, some of them are more well-rounded, but I still feel like, at least in my personal experience, they're very compliance driven. And like I said at the beginning, the language that the compliance person speaks is not the same language as the offensive security person. And
Yeah.
it's not an entry-level job to do pen testing effectively. It is high barrier to entry, and it has a steep learning curve and an infinite sort of like you know length to the top.
Yeah.
So
So well, not establishing that, but with that in mind, what kind of frameworks should we be using? What kind of reporting KPIs should we be using for the board? What is useful for the board to know?
Well, I think the first thing is, what do they have already in other areas of the business? We're not trying to redesign the board and the way it works. The first thing I would do when setting this up is go and look at historical archive. Let's look at the minutes and the agendas from the last two
What is
years.
what is the CFO reporting?
Yeah,
What is
yeah. How is
the legal officer reporting?
exactly? And I'd go and spend hours with them going, how do you generate this? How do these go down? Because each board is different. There isn't a perfect set of things. And being able to go, cool, they like it in this way, or they don't like a busy slide, things like that. You want to bespoke it and make sure we're delivering it in a way they understand.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we have these weapons in our tool chest already. We know what gap analysis is. We just don't know how to apply, or many of us don't know how to apply it to cybersecurity. So it's just good project management, good housekeeping.
Yeah, and also doing it outside of the exec, I think, is the other thing. So KPIs for formal meeting, great, but you need to be going and having lunch with these people one on one and building the relationship so you can frankly work out how to get things through and to communicate a message. And it's the education piece of they're not going to put their hand up in front of the board and go, sorry, what's a firewall? But they will when you have lunch with them, and they will
Yeah.
go, explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
Yeah, yeah. So it does sound well, it's like the standard consultant answer there, Ed. It depends on what it's how we report.
Hey,
I jest, but it does quite literally depend on what your board is used to listening to.
yeah,
I want to throw one wrench in here because, when we're talking about KPIs or when we're talking about, I don't know, just the right data to look at. I like to think about phishing, phishing tests that companies do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
firstly, question. So what do you think is the most common way to measure, the sort of resilience of a company during a phishing assessment?
Well, click-throughs or something like that, right? Or lack of click-throughs.
Yeah, so at least in my experience, typically we're seeing how many people fell for the trap.
Yeah,
And I'm just gonna tell you right here, at the right moment in the right context, you're gonna get tricked.
yeah.
there's a
You're gonna click
lot.
it.
It's high. Yeah.
So that metric in and of itself is completely useless. And I like to compare this. This is not mine originally, but I like to compare this to unattended luggage at airports. If you just think about that concept, you know it's a bad thing, right? So the airport people, whoever they are, they've done a great job at telling us unattended luggage is a bad thing. So it would be much better, maybe not a KPI, but a way of tracking information to say how many people reported the phishing thing.
Yes. Not
Because
Yeah,
it's
how
a,
many
absolutely.
people clicked
because
it.
it's a cultural type of thing. You want to educate the entire culture and you want it to sort of trickle from bottom up and top down.
Yeah.
But it also gives people a false sense of security, statistics like that, because you've got the cool 30% of the population fell for it, 10% reported it. And then when you look at a lot of these systems, we had to poke all sorts of holes in our spam and filtering software to allow these phishing emails to get through because our system would have spotted them. So
Yeah.
you're testing people with, yeah, we're teaching them what phishing is and don't click on stuff, but they're also not necessarily the ones that are going to get through that will trick people anyway.
Well, maybe not, but most, I would say, I don't have the numbers,
Mm.
backing me up, but most companies get hacked through people, and it's really easy
Yes.
to just
No,
to
it's
find
true.
targets. And
That that
it doesn't
yeah.
have to be through the email. It can just be through their, number. And you've probably had these robocalls. It looks like a UK-based number or Icelandic number, but it's just a string that's coming through to your phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a fantastic question. I think it's my favorite one of the day so far from Suzanne. New do-it-all CISO here. We've all been there. Is there a danger in comparing my organization's security metrics against industry peers, or is it benchmarking? Sorry, or is benchmarking a necessary tool for the board to understand their competitive risk? It's very true because again, we're talking about well, it depends what the board wants to
Mm.
hear and their maturity, but then we're also saying we need to be better than, just
It,
better than the next door neighbor.
so yes, and again, sorry,
It depends.
consultancy answer. Um, yes and no to both questions. Benchmarking is inherently flawed because nobody's sharing the really true score. So if you go out and buy maturity data, that's only people who are going through a transformation or have been forced to share it or that sort of thing. So it's not brilliantly accurate, um, but it is directional, and the board want it, regardless of whether you think it's right. The board want it, and I will say, if you don't give it to the board, they're going to come to a consultant like me occasionally and go, "Is our CISO doing the right
Yeah.
thing?" And that's one of the ways you approach it by going, "Here are But of course, which benchmark? And that's very malleable because nobody is the perfect match for your organization's size, distribution, and what you do. So you can also pick the benchmarks that suit you. And, but they are dangerous. So, for example, in some of the benchmarks I use, some of them have gone down recently. And that's quite hard to get your head round with some of the execs going, no, I don't think all your competitors have got worse. I think the data's just, they've spoken to different people.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's preface my reply to this with that I'm not in consulting, but I am completely for this way or this motif. I think this is the right way to approach it. I think you should do these benchmarks because it allows you, like, if you're low compared to your competitors or your peers, then you have a way to say I need more money or I need more something agency to do the right thing, and that's the right language for that sort of crowd. So I'm completely for it. Is it risky? I mean, maybe for your job if you're doing poorly, but for the company, why would it be risky inherently?
And also, it's the best data you're going to get on your competition, right?
It is. And it also, in some ways, protects you as the CISO by going, cool, I told you about this in writing that we are below the pack. And you said I had to remove 5 million from my budget. Yeah. So fair enough, but I warned you. Some of it is, unfortunately, self-protection.
But isn't it just the same as, your kids are like, oh, she has an iPhone. Why do I only have a...
It's very true. It's very true. And it's all relative at the end of the day, isn't it? What is better? We might be better at some elements of cybersecurity, but not as good as you in other elements, and that maturity.
And I think that leads to the metrics that are really useful. So, cool, you scored 2.5 on the NIST maturity scale versus somebody who got 3, great. But you do multiple rehearsals where you have proven you can recover the environment within 6 hours onto fresh hardware.
Yeah.
That's a really comforting statistic because we've proved it multiple times.
And far more practical and foundational to the survival and resilience of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. But maybe to add to this is that, okay, so we're talking KPIs, but KPIs can be, of different sizes, flavors, all that stuff. But I think the first step, honestly, is just that you understand your own company, your appetite for risk, and sort of what are the worst case scenarios, because that will guide what you want to do. Obviously, like if you're in like regulated industries, there are some must-haves there, but I think this is the best way to start, and because it's a really wide cybersecurity is this really wide concept.
Yeah, absolutely, and you cannot prove a negative. You can't, I detected 4,000 attacks with the SOC and they responded in 13 seconds. Great. What about the 2 that you didn't attack that we don't know about versus we've got an incident response plan that's bloody good and we've rehearsed it and we've got a recovery plan. So we know even if it goes horribly wrong, we're back up and running before the morning.
Yeah.
That's real, that's they pack parachutes very, very carefully. Yeah. You hope nobody uses them.
Yeah. So, well, unless you do it for a sport, in which case you really hope they do.
That's just stupid.
Yeah, it is. It's throwing yourself out of a perfectly serviceable aircraft. There is a time, literally, we could 30 seconds to run this question from Robert, which would have been useful if you'd asked it like 30 minutes ago, Robert. We might have been able to answer it properly. Just saying. That's quite all right, mate. What would be the top 5 metrics would be worth looking at when comparing? And I don't think that we're going to get 5 here, and also we might get a couple of it depends, but anything that you particularly want to throw out?
I can do 2 off the top of my head. Well, actually, I don't remember what they're called, but I think, and even they're not really security, even they're just good housekeeping. But how long does it take for us to reestablish the domain or the system from ground zero in a few cases? So how long does it take is probably the best safety metric they can have in a few scenarios, like if somebody's dead or if you just get hacked.
Yeah.
Ed,
any one from you?
I think the key controls that we've tested and proven to work. So it's exactly the same point of backups are great. If you don't test them, every week, every month, and actually prove not just, oh, we've got a good log on it, prove that you can get the data back and prove that the account management works. I think that's a lovely statistic of here are our key controls. What's the efficiency of them?
Yeah, very good. Right, we've come to time. So we're very tight up against it. So I'm going to ask both of you the same question I ask every single week for the last goodness knows how many years. But what should our audience members do when they get back to their desks tomorrow as regards metrics for their C-suites? Give each of you 10 seconds. And Ed, I'm going to start with you.
Don't presume you know what they want. Go and meet them all individually, spend time with them, find out what's going to work for them. Because if we just turn up with, oh, this is what we think's right, it's inevitably wrong.
Brilliant. And Bjorn?
Yeah, same. You have to ask what's the worst that can happen. You have to ask the right person because that's a conversation starter that will allow you to do your job better, to understand.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you both very much. So it just behooves me now to thank you both. Ed, thank you so much. And Bjorn, thank you. I'm just very rapidly clicking to see what our next episode is. So our next episode is next week, 12th of March, Geopolitics and Regulation, Reshaping the Energy Sector's Supply Chain. Rest, do join us for that same time next week. As regards the teissTalk mug, well, I think it was already foregone conclusion when I said it was my favourite question. So Suzanne, congratulations. Congratulations on your new do-it-all CISO role as well. Hopefully you'll be able to present that on your desk and make all of your non-existent team very, very jealous. Thank you both. Once again, Ed, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bjorn, thank you. And thank you for being our sponsor.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Apologies to Lisa, who wasn't able to make it. We'll get her in next time. And to the audience out there, stay secure, my friends.